My mother was murdered in front of me when I was 1 year old by my sperm donor. My mother was called over to visit with him. He lured her over, and I say lured because he asked her to come over to bring me so that he can give me Christmas presents. So this was around December 23rd, 1988. While there, they got into an argument where, as I've read in the police reports in the last 3 years, that it started to get really heated. And so his sister left the house, who was also there, to go look for help. While she was gone, they continued arguing. At some point, he then struck her and then stabbed her numerous times and then pulled a bookshelf on her. And then he tried to flee. But not only did he try to flee the scene, he tried to flee the scene with me. And so he had picked me up and took me out. And what stopped him was his sister, and probably saved my life. We'll never truly know, but she was able to get me away from him, and he ended up stealing my mother's car. And so my understanding in it, people say it quite often, as she and I are very similar. We are very cared for because we care for people. And so in that time, the hood, aka the gangsters, really loved her. So they put out what they would call a on him. So if anyone saw him, he would be quote unquote handled because of what happened to her. When I was growing up, my grandparents, who ended up raising me, they always told me what happened in the little pieces. It's the same way that I tell people to talk about sex ed or trauma. Give it in age-appropriate pieces. What I learned recently in my older age, in my 30s, was that one of the things I think in the way that it was not handled well is when they took me to my grandparents, they never changed my clothes. So they took a child and handed them to her parents. I'm like, that is a whole trauma cycle, a whole situation. When I was 28 and I started working in said, I transitioned my career away from just mental health and kind of expanded it. And so I was off to a training to learn how to be a better speaker. Look at us now. And I got a call from my grandmother. And the first thing she said was, I hope you're not mad at me. And I was like, hello, what'd you do? And she's like, oh, you got a letter from that man that says he's your father. And I've never heard of prison clickbait, but stick with me. So the reason I called it prison clickbait, because on the outside of the letter, it said, hey, this is your father. You have a sister. And I was like, that gives clickbait because you want me to open it. And so I didn't see it for a while. I knew it was a thing. And so in preparation, because I am who I am, in preparation, I reached out to my best friends in a group chat. And they said, what do you need? How do you want to handle this? And I said, I would like crab in a bag. And then let's read the letter together. So I read the letter by myself the night before. And I kind of just sat with it. And then I took it to dinner with my 4 best friends. And we ate. My best friend Lauren was like, all right, let's get into this. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And they each read it. And then we sat there and they held space for me and loved on me and made it okay to be in such a weird thing and did all the things that your best friend should do. Now, what's in this letter? I know you're thinking, what is it? It was bullshit. And within the first part of the letter, it was like, hey, this is your dad. I'm not dead. And I was like, clearly, you're writing. He said he learned how to read and write in prison. Okay. The thing that struck me, and I was done after that, I continued to read it, but there was nothing else to absorb, was he wrote, things happened between me and your mother. Sorry about that. He proceeded to tell me about this sister, quote unquote, describing her, more clickbait. He goes, if you want to know more, write me back. I was like, if you're Googling me, you should have realized I'm a lot smarter than this. And then proceeded to tell me he cared about me and has always thought about me and loves me. And so my thought was, how the hell did you get my grandparents' address? We didn't live in that same house before. We had moved. And so he actually told me at the end of the letter that some lawyer had gotten my grandparents' address and given it to him. And I was like, that is so disgusting and unsafe. And so you will never get the right to be called a dad or a father because those are active roles and you just donated some sperm. Thank you so much. I'm a blessing that you missed out on. You know, it's really interesting. I don't know the first time my grandparents shared my mother had been murdered or that she was gone, but I remember moments of being in elementary school and someone making a joke like, haha, that's why your mom's dead. You know, little children are a little evil. But I do remember knowing that she wasn't there and they never hid anything from me. I'll get to that. They never hid anything per se. I had all her photos. I've had all her albums. Now, when I say they didn't hide anything, they had taken all his photos out, my sperm donors' photos out. And the only reason I truly knew what he looked like was when I went to undergrad. I didn't know what that man looked like until I was 18 years old. And I wrote a paper about him in college. Let me tell you about my professor, a little weird. She was like, do you mind if I write him? And I said, what? She was like, it's just the story's so interesting. Boundaries were crossed. And, we're still learning boundaries at that age. She had not. I thought that was very crass and disgusting. Like, what are we doing? But I didn't know what he looked like until then. It's really interesting. He looks like a young Tupac at the time. But fun fact and not fun fact, I am currently 38. When I was 35, I got a phone call. And I thought it was like a prank call or they were looking for someone else. But it was a detective. And he was calling to speak to me and my grandmother. And so I was like, this could be whatever. Spam is spam. People get weird. And so she had ended up calling me and was like, hey, somebody just called me and they were a detective and I didn't understand what they were talking about. Can you call him? And I said, absolutely. One thing I want to note is I signed up to get notified if anything ever happened to him, if he got moved or anything, because he was on death row for not my mother's murder. This is a good point. Let me drop this in and I'll come back. He was on death row for murdering a pimp in Vegas because they had the death penalty. He then pled not disability, but like incompetence, mental incompetence. So his case was lessened. Let me tell you, this man is a murderer. He murdered the pimp in Vegas. He murdered an elderly white couple. He murdered a bartender. He murdered my mother. Sir, it's giving you're a murderer. I don't know what we're talking about. So this detective reached out and was like, hey, we just wanted you to know he's been moved to Riverside to be held accountable for your mother's murder. And I'm like, okay, why wasn't I notified? And here's where they also didn't tell us. They had moved him almost a year before. And the only reason they were finally reaching out was because he was supposed to go in front of the judge. In this moment, I am 38 years old and he has still not been in front of a judge because I constantly check. At one point, he was supposed to go in front of the judge on my birthday and I was like, that's rude. He didn't. He still has not been in front of a judge. He is still in prison in Riverside. I will say this, and I say this quite often. I will say that I will account for being raped once, but I've been sexually assaulted more times than I can account for. And I think that is a lot of people's story in understanding that sexual assault is an umbrella and all of these other things are underneath it. Existing in this body with a behind, with lips and curves and all these things. For some reason, people don't respect others' bodies. Not just mine, I'm sure, but others in general. So I have been touched more than I've consented to. And the person that raped me, I had been with him before. I remember it. It was around spring 2009. I was sleeping in my apartment. And I always like to note that I was at home sleeping. Because people always are like, well, where were you? What were you doing? What were you wearing? Let me tell you, I was about 5 dreams in. Okay, I was in some pajamas in my bed, in where I thought was a safe space in my apartment. And I'm sure someone else had let him in because they thought whatever, because we had been together beforehand. And I woke up, and this later affected a lot of things, but I woke up and he was standing over me naked with a condom on. And I fawned, which I now have so much language and I utilize that to help people. I'm sure we'll get to it. But I fawned and I knew he had an obsession with weapons. I had seen them. And so I just went in motion. And then it was like he raped me and then he finished and then put his clothes on and left. And it was the wildest thing. And it happened in a way that, like, as other survivors have questioned, like, what just happened? Is that okay? Because I've been with him before. Like, he just surprised me. Like, you go into so many questions because we start shaming ourselves before other people can. That's a way of getting in control. Well, maybe I shouldn't have, or maybe I should have. No. And I will say this to any survivor that hears this. You didn't ask for that and that wasn't consensual. So no, it's never on you. And so I didn't tell anyone that I had been for 7 years until I was 28. 2019, I'm moving into my best friend's house, Sarah, because I just came back from my first 10-day silent retreat. And so I'm moving into her house and I'm moving stuff back and forth. And I get in my car and my phone is ringing. I get a text message and a Venmo request, or like a Venmo ching. I said, money first, clearly. I was like, who sent me money? It was my rapist. He had sent me 25 cents. And in the note, it was the year he raped me. And the craziest thing, when I tell people that, they're like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, absolutely, me too. But at that point, I had already been doing so much work. I'd already known myself and all the things, which also I knew. I said, I got 30 minutes until it's about to get weird. And so the reason I share this is because this is where I start creating tools. With my own trauma, I create tools to help other people. And so I knew that you can be triggered by any of your five senses. You can be grounded by any of your five senses. So I read that was visual. So I put on music. I went to this park by my house. I literally was grounded. I took my shoes off. I'm touching the grass. I got some elote. I was watching the kids play. I was trying to do all the things. And I was like, this isn't working. So I ended up going back to the house. And this is where I created this idea of how to ask for help. And I sat down and I was like, okay, I can't do this. So I texted my crew separately. And I was just like, hey, this is what happened. Here's what I need from you. Because my idea was, I love all my friends and they all show up differently in ways and they do that so well. And so how I created how to ask for help is, you know who's in your life. You know how they show up for you. People in your life want to show up for you and sometimes they don't know how. And so what I did was, and this is what I teach my clients and who I'm teaching y'all now, is you write down your names of your people. You write down your favorite thing that they do for you. Maybe they curate music for you. Maybe they're great with food. Maybe they know how to like get you out of your head. Maybe they're an artist, whatever. And you text them, hey, I was just, thinking about our relationship, whatever, change the language, whatever you need. And I was just wondering if you'd be one of my people. Most people are not going to be like, absolutely not. They're going to be like, yes, please choose me. Great. You are so great at curating music for me. When I'm stressed out, like, is it okay if like you send me a song or call and play me something? Oh my God, yes. Do you want a playlist? Whatever. And then you create a safe word. Safe word is not just for, you can utilize that for anything that you need help in with your people, right? And so I'm like, we create an example. Again, say I texted you and I was like, can our word be blue? And you're like, absolutely it can. So if I'm having a day and I need music to get me back, whatever, I'm just going to text you the word blue. You already know what to do because we've had that conversation. I get the support I need and you get to feel like you showed up for me. We both win. We both strengthen our relationship. I believe that after my assault, there's many ways that things can show up. I was always a person, but I also was someone that people saw was like, oh, she's out here and she's doing these things. Sure. But also the rumors I heard about myself were hilarious. They'd be like, she's sleeping with this person. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm playing video games with him. I'm sleeping with him. Like, people just had all these assumptions, but also what these people didn't know because they didn't ask questions. I love a question. I had conversations with all these people. So I had consent beforehand. So I think, it carried through after. No one had ever raped me or been able to be that close to me in that way until I was in bed sleeping, right? And so that idea of, is there a transition or is there just me existing and navigating? And every day was different, right? Some days it was great and some days I was having a panic attack and didn't know what was happening to me. And to be able to like sit here today and like do this work, it's because I've had a lot of conversations about it. I've talked about it in therapy a lot. So people are like, you just tell the story. And I'm like, I do tell the story. And I also realized that it's a wild story, right? Like, but now that I have a lot of friends that are true crime survivors, I'm like, it's not that wild compared to other people's stories. Is it something wild? Sure, for a lot of people. But I also go, me telling this story is going to help someone else, right? And one of the things my grandmother used to say is, do you have to tell all your business? And I'd be like, I don't. You know all my business. And then she looks at me. But I'm like, no, I don't. But I do have to tell some things because my existence in a room allows someone else to also exist. Even when I was working in wrestling, it was like, I'm a flagger. So you'll always see I'm always wearing leather. I would make sure my tattoos were out. I always had like a piece of myself. Like some other people would have been like covered up. And I'm like, no, you get who you get because that allowed the people that needed to talk to me to go, wait, okay, maybe it's a vibe. I'm like in my office blasting like The Used and Taking Back Sunday favorite bands. And people walk by and they're like, hey, what's going on in here? Can I sit with you? And I'm like, got you. I feel like being present in all of the work allows you to go through things, right? People often will come into session with me like, here's the thing. I just want to get through it. I just want to get over it. And I'm like, okay, we can't go over it. You have to go through the thing, right? There is no, get through it in like one session. You didn't navigate this trauma in one day. It hasn't affected you for one day. So it's going to take time to unwind all the things. And so it's kind of like that. It's like one day at a time and like existing. And like I said, every day I don't exist in it. I don't. I try not to. But then someone's like, hey, here's this email. Here's a smoke signal, blah, blah, blah. But also, I do know that I know more things than a lot of people do, fortunately and unfortunate. Like I was talking to someone that I'm dating and I was just like, I know more than people need to know. I know more people that are raped. I know more people whose cases get thrown out. When people are like, well, that person didn't, they didn't keep moving forward in the cases. And I'm like, because they're tired and they're being harassed. That does not mean that that person didn't do it. And they go, oh, well, I'm like, yeah. And so it's a privilege and sometimes it's a rough privilege. But I do love the work that I get to do. People are like, you really like this. And I'm like, I do. Because I don't think if I wasn't present with myself and the understanding, I couldn't do this work. And this is also why I tell people who are like, well, I'm a survivor. I want to help survivors. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? And they go, I want to do what you do. And I'm like, you don't know what I do. You don't know my background. I have threat assessment training. I have a master's degree in health psychology. I have other trainings. I am trained in alternative medicine. My background psychology from my youth. Like that doesn't count all the other side trainings I've done. Therapy, meditation, silent retreats, yoga girl. Listen, not all at the same time though, in sections, but there's a lot of work that has gone into me sitting in this seat right now. There's learning how to speak. I have not always been a confident speaker. I've been but not now because I thought I needed to make myself smaller. And I'm still working on that. I am still working on taking up space and being this person. And, again, a woo girl, every card reading I've got, they're like, you need to be more authentic. Show that part and stop stunting yourself because that is where the magic is. And so I started doing it. I have had to unlearn a lot to exist, to be in this space, to find myself. But I think a lot of us have to unlearn a lot to figure out our own values, right? Our first teachers are our parents or whoever raised us. And they might teach you some wild things because that's what they knew. But the cool part is we get to become adults and go, oh, that's actually not mine. Here's what I would like to put into my bag and build that for myself. And I think that I'm still building that because I'm always learning about myself. And I think we should always be learning. And that's the flexibility I brought up before is we should always be flexible physically and mentally. Like we're aging also. So like constantly that movement and being open to the what if, I think has allowed me to kind of exist. And now I can utilize that and go, here's where I understood where it went. And it allows me to utilize that in teaching and to tell that story to people and tell the story of my sending me that Venmo request or tell the story of like asking for help and learning how to create those tools and learning the difference between self-care and self-soothing because everyone thinks self-care is going to a spa. To be able to do all these things and curate this, it's kind of a gift that I get to take out of all the bullshit. The 21-year-old version of myself, I would first say, I hear you and I see you and I believe you. No matter what you say right now, I believe you. And I would leave that door open for her because she was a little stubborn. She's a little stubborn Gemini. But I would leave that door open for her and give her those resources because I was looking for them. I was looking for help, but I didn't know how to formulate it. Also at 18 was the first time I had ever somewhat experienced like friendship bullying. And I was like, I am too old for this. That's crazy. I, was ostracized. Like I had never experienced any of these things. So it was just all so much. And it was just overwhelming. And so I would tell her, this is temporary. This space is temporary. You have community. And if you don't, let's find it for you. Something that I say quite often is that I believe that sexual assault is a community issue. The ways that we support survivors and the ways that we don't, we ostracize them. the ways that we support predators and the ways that we don't hold them accountable in the ways that we should. And so if things happen in the community, we need to also address the larger community. And I'm not just talking about the world, which unfortunately 1 in 3 women, which I think that number is going to always be skewed because people don't report. So it's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men in their lifetime. Again, these numbers will also be skewed. Well, that too, skewed. Because it also doesn't account for age. It doesn't account for race, finances, demographics. It doesn't account for all that because these people have higher numbers. And so I remember when I was looking for help and like doing research and stuff, and none of it looked like me. It was all thin white women. And I was like, now I know other people are being harmed besides this very specific type of woman. And I thought it was such a disservice for everything. So I mentioned I went on a 10-day silent retreat. The first day of that retreat, when I did it in 2019, I came up with the concept of wanting to do retreats for survivors because we needed community. So I didn't have an idea. It was just like, I wanted this thing. Crazy part. My friends still are like, what? You can't read, you can't write, you can't look people in the eye, you can't talk. You're just meditating, group meditation, solo meditation. Then there's just like a little walking trail, but you're separated by genders, men and women. That's it. There's more than that, but that's how they believe. And you're eating like a vegetarian diet. You're getting so cleansed, but you have to keep all your thoughts. So I started working through the idea of a community space. And at first I wanted to create a retreat for women of color. Numbers are extremely high. We're often overlooked and all the things and all the questions. And so I wanted to have a 5-day retreat for women. And it was going to be focused around education, mental health, and body connection stuff. Fast forward, I come up with this name with my partner, my manager at the time, Tending the Garden, because you have to put in time. There's different tools that come into tending the garden. You have your garden is personal to you. So that's where I came up with a nonprofit called Tending the Garden, where we support those that have been marginalized. And we have different pillars, right? So it was supposed to just be women of color. Pandemic happened. That was going to be our first retreat. The retreat center stole $30,000 of fundraised money from us and refused to give it back, including money from survivors. I luckily was able to get a grant from American Express that year. I paid back every survivor because absolutely not. I went through multiple lawyers, started losing my hair. It got wild. I had to give up because they were in Costa Rica. What am I going to do? I'm going to roll up on them. So I gave up on that. We then turned to doing like online things for community because we were all in the house. 2020 was a time, honey. We were just sad. And so being able to switch it to having more community and also stepping back and going, oh, there's these other people that are also overlooked. But internally is what we really carry, right? Our thoughts, our feelings, all of those things that aren't addressed. And so I break it down and I slow them down. And then we get into first thing, eat your little food, get your little snack, but it's a date. Dress up if you want. Go out to dinner, order in, do whatever feels good for you. And then there's body movement. There's yoga, go outside for a walk, dance. I love a dance party. Do that, right? And then from there, it's a cleansing, a shower, a bath, but not a regular shower where you got like 2 minutes and you're like in and out. No. I want you to buy that bath soap you've been looking at that smells good. I want you to scrub. I want you to lotion because we're not ashy, we moisturize. I want you to lotion or oil or do whatever you need to do. Slow it down and be intentional. Every step is intentional. And then I have them go through either touching or positions. You're going to do both. So touch is like, where do you want to be touched? What kind of pressure? How do you like to be touched? Where don't you want to be touched? People forget all these things. There are steps to get there. And I know we all want to get back to the thing, but also things have changed and we got to find new tools and that's okay. But I try to make it fun. Like I have people that go, okay, I didn't know that was an option. Okay, I'm coming back. I'll see you next session. And it's fun. Like I call myself a trauma companion because in survivorship, in trauma, I'm walking beside you. Who the hell am I to come in and be like, here's what you should be doing? You are silencing the survivor. You're taking their autonomy away. You're not being helpful. I make them move. We talk. We do activities. There's homework. It's not just a 1-hour session. It's ongoing because this little 1 hour together, you're going to be like, okay, that was so cool. And then later you'll be like, oh my God, oh no. It's still happening. So we're still processing and working on it. And so for me, I think that we should have more conversations about after trauma because it exists. We are single beings.